My hot take for this one is that charity is bad, actually. Oh my god. Okay, but it's not. If you've never been introduced to the idea of charity as a problem, then I know that sounds like a wild thing to say, but hear me out. I'm not saying that helping people is bad, not at all, but rather that charity is an ineffective and sometimes actively harmful way of accomplishing that, and that mutual aid is infinitely better. In order to explain all this, let's start with talking about what exactly charity is. Charity, at its most basic definition, is the generous donation of funds, resources, or services, typically from wealthy people to poor people. But it doesn't actually benefit poor people as much as you may have been led to believe. Charity is a top down solution, rarely consulting with the people they're supposed to be helping. It's a paternalistic and classist framework that assumes wealthy, privileged people know better than the poor and marginalized what they need, and at its worst is often a means to control those poor and marginalized people. I can actually give you an example from my personal life. In my senior year of high school, my family was in a precarious living situation. My mom was struggling to find employment. I was 18 and working part-time for like $8 an hour, and all of my four siblings were even younger. A friend of my mom's suggested we go to a local Christian-run women's shelter. This shelter was able to give us a place to live, but they had a long list of rules, including curfews, the requirement that my mom tell a leader of the organization where she was going anytime she left, and the requirement that we attend their church services. This made my mom and me deeply uncomfortable. The shelter seemed to be treating my mom like it was her fault that she was in her current situation, and had a heavy focus on rehabilitating her when that was not at all what she needed. She didn't, do anything? We were suffering from structural failures, like the inherent corruption of capitalism, not personal moral failings. And like, can you imagine moving into some apartment complex as a grown adult and being treated like that? Like you couldn't be responsible for your own life? Like you'd done something wrong by being poor? We ended up being fortunate enough not to have to stay in that shelter. A family from our own church offered to take us in temporarily, no strings attached, and during the time we were staying there, my mom was able to find work and get some help from her parents, who live a few states away, and we're now living in our own house. But do you see how charity often treats the people it's supposed to be helping as somehow lesser? And furthermore, when rich people get to decide where to allocate funds, they get to decide which cases are worthwhile. They don't ask the poor and marginalized how they can help. A great example is Mr. William Gates, the paragon of philanthropy. While Gates has done some good work and all that, his charitable giving has, in some cases, caused direct harm. His now infamous work in education reform was a catastrophic failure, wasting millions of dollars. And not only of his own money, but also the money that schools contributed as part of the reform. This was all because he did not listen to education experts and instead decided he knew best, apparently. He wanted to get better teachers for poor students and thought he could tell which teachers were the best off of just standardized testing and peer review, which, okay. Yeah, it didn't work. And all of that money that could have been spent on actually improving school for students in low-income areas was just funneled into the ineffective passion project of a billionaire. I'm sorry to hate on Bill Gates so much. That felt like a very angry segment. But listen, there's just no such thing as a good billionaire. Even when he does use his money for actual good things, like he exploited people to get it, so... My main point is that charity doesn't seem to hold the poor in very high regard. And this same framework is seen in government aid projects and a lot of nonprofits, or, just things that are mainly run by rich white people. It manifests in only helping the deserving poor, and doing things like means testing, which requires rigorous proof that you're actually poor enough, as anyone who has ever tried to get on food stamps could tell you. It is a nightmare. These organizations don't respect the poor and marginalized as equals who have just been shamefully failed by the system, but rather sees them as some dangerous, degenerate underbelly of society. And hey, they're just people, actually. Like, just the same as you, I promise. I've talked to a lot of them, and I can confirm they are equal human beings. But if charity sucks so hard, then what is the solution? Mutual aid functions using an entirely different framework. It takes into account the fact that people are suffering because of systematic issues and not because there's something wrong with them, and so it trusts those people to be involved in the solution. They're built along horizontal lines, not hierarchical ones, allowing the people to help each other instead of relying on the benevolence of the bourgeoisie. There are mutual aid organizations that serve to help with a variety of problems, such as helping people who are just getting out of jail by giving them rides or temporary places to stay, distributing food through organizations like Food Not Bombs, and offering childcare to people who need to work or want to participate in other forms of community organizing. These kinds of groups don't need help from the rich and powerful. They mean that we don't have to wait around on our ineffective government or the whim of some rich person, but rather that we can do something ourselves, right now. And it puts leadership back in the hands of the people, giving them the respect and self-determination that they deserve. And also, if you're an anarchist like me or some other flavor of leftist and you want to flatten those unjust hierarchies and dissolve the state, we're gonna need some community organizations set up ahead of time so that we can take care of ourselves. Putting these structures into place now is revolutionary action and is actively making the world a better place. It's something we should all be involved in. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and thank you in particular to my mom for letting me interview her for this one, by which I mean I just went into her room and was like, hey, remember how messed up everything was when we were trying to get into that, women's shelter, and yeah. My main point of this whole video is just treat poor people like humans and do mutual aid. I'm actually gonna link like a hub of different mutual aid projects and resources down below, so go and get involved. I used a video of theirs as a reference. I'm going to link that too with my other references. This is a time of many crises. It's more important now than ever to help each other out. And I hope you're doing good wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.